So without further ado, Sh Omar Suleiman. And he will be speaking today. The topic is Sunnah of Optimism.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والعاقبة للمتقين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ورسولك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran something that is very profound when He says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تهنوا ولا تحزنوا وأنتم الأعلون إن كنتم مؤمنين. Do not grieve, do not feel any form of despair, any form of sadness. وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. And you are the best people, you are the highest. إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. If you are believers. And the topic of optimism is something that can be reflected not just on a community base, but it's also reflected in attitude and on an individual level. And it covers many different aspects. And subhanAllah, some of the, if we look at every single aspect of our deen, we'll see that optimism is a critical aspect of it, all the way from dua, where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Id'u Allah wa antum muqinuna bil ijaba." Call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while you are confident in His answering your dua. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, for example, forbade us from saying, or He told us, do not say, Allahumma in shi'ta, Oh Allahumma in aratta, oh Allah, if you wish, or if you will, or if it pleases you, forgive us. But rather we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, forgive us. Do not add the element if you are pleased by doing so, or if you wish to. Call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with confidence in your dua. And there is optimism in our attitudes. When Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu once saw a man who was walking with his head down and his back was hunched over and he's walking in a very slow manner. And Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu looked at him and he said, Ya hadha la tumit alayna deenana. Oh so-and-so, don't make our deen look like dead people. Don't make Muslims look like dead people. Walk with your head up. Walk straight. Do not walk in this way. And we see in the reflection of the attitude of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a beautiful description that sums up what it would be like to be in the presence of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam from none other than his wife Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, whenever she said, "Kana Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam bassaman dhahakan." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was always smiling. And of course, the laugh of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not an obnoxious laugh. Nevertheless, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would smile in a very, very heartwarming way. And not only was he smiling and was he laughing, but bassam and dhahakan means that he causes everyone around him to smile, and he causes everyone around him to laugh. This is our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who without a doubt had the hardest task that any human being has ever had in mankind, bringing the entire world to Islam in a matter of 23 years, with all that he suffered, with all of the humiliation, with all of the torture, with all of the tasks that he had, carrying the ambition of the entire ummah on his back, carrying the hardships and the struggles of the entire ummah on his back. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam still could smile, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam still could laugh. And he still had that aura around him that caused everyone else around him to have that attitude. And then you have the optimism in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even with names. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was coming to Yathrib and he changes the name to Taiba. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sees a woman named Asiya and he changes her name to Jamila, someone who was disobedient to someone who was beautiful. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw the valley of Dalala and changed it to the valley of Hidayah. Subhanallah. The valley of misguidance, he changed it to the valley of guidance. When Rasulullah ﷺ changes someone's name from Abdul Ka'ba or Abdul something, Abdul Shams to Abdul Rahman or Abdullah, this was the optimism of Rasulullah ﷺ, and this demonstrates optimism and attitude. But what we're talking about tonight is a very, very specific area of optimism. And I want to first use a hadith that Imam al-Qayyim rahimahullah used in a very broad sense. Of course, it refers to something specific. But it's a very profound hadith where the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Ma anzal Allahu min da illa ja'ala lahu dawa." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has never sent down a disease without sending its cure. And Imam al-Qayyim rahimahullah says, from this hadith we take that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has never sent a problem without sending its solution. So regardless of the problems that we face as communities, regardless of the problems that we face as individuals, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided a solution to it. And that is the peak of optimism. When you approach everything not as a hurdle, but rather something that you can conquer. An obstacle in the way that you can conquer. Not something that's going to derail you. Something that you can get over and something that you will become stronger as a result of. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing to us the believers in the Quran, إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمِعُوا لَكُمْ, that people have gathered against you, people are coming against you, you have no hope here, right? It's not like people are coming to the Sahaba and telling them, TSA is going to over-search you now. It's not like people were telling the Sahaba, now whenever you go to Walmart, people are going to look at you funny. They're telling the Sahaba, what are you doing? You're going to be killed. Haven't you learned from all the lashings and the beatings and all those types of things? Haven't you learned that this is a failed cause? That this is not going anywhere? And not only did their iman not decrease, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. It made them stronger. They had more iman as a result of that. Because as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِن دَاءٍ إِلَّا جَعَلَ لَهُ دَوَاءً. With every problem, there's a solution. With every disease, there's a cure. It made them stronger. And we see this optimism in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, incredible. And even the hardest moments of his life, in Ta'if when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam still has his blood fresh all over him. His wounds are still fresh. The stones are still in his shoes. He just suffered the worst moments of his life. And not only does he not make dua against the people like all of us would do, out of vengeance, he makes dua for them. He still sees hope in them. He still says that maybe one of them will come out saying, La ilaha illallah. He doesn't want to give up on them. Even in those moments, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam never became a pessimist. Never once do you see Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam giving up or demonstrating any type of pessimism. Then when he's on the run sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the hijrah, and he's caught by Suraq ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu, a man who's coming to assassinate a fugitive. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, not only does he give da'wah to Suraqa, the audacity of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that he tells Suraqa that the bracelets of Kisra are going to be on these hands. This is a man sallallahu alayhi wa sallam who's on the run, who's a fugitive at that moment, who's a marked man, who has no army to support him. But he has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even in those moments, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has, I guess the motto is the audacity of hope, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has the audacity to say to that man that you are going to wear the bracelets of the most powerful emperor in the world, fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The audacity of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Hudaybiyah, whenever he's being humiliated once again in the eyes of people. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is making that treaty. And Suhail ibn Amr does not even allow Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to have written on that treaty, Muhammad Rasulullah. He's not even allowed to have his title on there.